Thank you very much, Danielle. It is time for the headliner brought to you by Miller Lite. Let's bring in the voice of Tiger baseball on Fox Sports Detroit, Matt Shepard, as we talk Tigers draft. Matt, thanks for joining us. It's always a pleasure having you on the Word on Woodward.
Arthur, you're looking well. I always love talking sports with you. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, although I think I'm putting on a few. Everyone I know is losing weight during this shutdown, and I just seem to be getting bigger and bigger. I'm going to have to start doing something. But aside from that, let's get right into the Tigers draft, because the baseball draft was always one over the years that I really didn't follow because it was endless. And they drafted a lot of high school players. And, this one I kind of like because it was only 5 rounds. Tigers had 6 picks. But the thing that I'm encouraged about, if you look at it, they draft 3 third basemen, a shortstop, a catcher, and an outfielder. So obviously, they're trying to replenish their farm system and this organization by going with positional players this draft as opposed to pitching, which, as we both know, even though this was a draft that had a lot of pitching prospects,
Yeah.
but they're pretty happy, I would assume, with where they're at pitching wise. But it was time to shore up the positional players.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And remember this, though. There is a situation here with Al Avila, who last year David Chad, Scott Place, they drafted their first 6 picks were position players, led Riley Green. They had a couple of third basemen, right, in Nick Quintana and Andre Lipsius. And they had a shortstop in Ryan Kreidler out of UCLA. They took those guys all within the first 6 rounds. They didn't get a pitcher until the 7th round when they took Zach Hess out of LSU. So yes, I think it tells you a couple of things. First of all, as much as this draft was rich in pitching, it was just as rich when the Tigers got their chance to choose with position players and, more importantly, quality bats. The other thing it tells you, as you alluded to, it tells you that this team is really comfortable with the pitching depth they have throughout the organization.
Well, I want to get right into the draft right now because I was a big Spencer Torkelson guy. I know that we've talked about it on past shows. Now, are we making too much out of this that they announced him as a third baseman? Because even though, and the reviews have been great for the Tigers, that everything I've read is that probably eventually, when it's all said and done, he's probably going to end up at first base. But were you surprised that they announced him as a third baseman?
I don't know if surprise would be the right word. It raised my eyebrows just a little bit. Look, the guy's really athletic, Art. I mean, he can play third base. He can play the outfield as well. He can play first base. I mean, if he can play first, he figures he can play third. Why not give it an opportunity, right? I mean, that's where more value comes from. Look at Nolan Arenado, right? You can make the shift over to first either later in your career or if you feel like there is a need. Engagement Workman works out at third base for you. Isaac Paredes works out at third for you. Nick Quintana, Andre Lipsius, who's actually moved to second. Any of those guys, maybe you feel has a better glove, has a better feel for it. Okay, then so be it. But what's wrong with starting him at third base? I believe you can find first basemen in free agency and convert them from corner outfielders or from former third basemen a little bit easier than you can find quality third baseman. Would you love to have a Matt Chapman? Absolutely. Can he be that? I don't know. But there's nothing wrong with starting him that way. Here's what you know. You got the quality player, the quality power bat, and the quality disciplined hitter of this draft. It gives you an A+ from that point moving forward.
Well, he doesn't seem to have any qualms about it. I mean, obviously he's the 1-1 in the Major League Baseball draft. I mean, you could tell him, hey, we want you to play center field, and he'd say, yeah, I can do it. I mean, I really do love his. I love his confidence. I am kind of curious. Do you think that he will? He seems to be on a fast track. I mean, what kind of timeline does Matt Shepard have for Spencer Torkelson before we'll see him in the Old English D?
Yeah, I had the same timeline for Riley Green. And I think when you're drafted that high, you and I have followed sports our entire professional careers. When you're drafted that high, you're expected to be an impact player. Scott Place, who's the director of amateur scouting for the Tigers, said that. We wanted to draft impact guys. We got impact guys. Spencer Torkelson, I figure, and you hate to put a timeline on it, but staying healthy, understanding his track record, the type of hitter he can be, I think he's a 2 years in the minors kind of guy. And then he's playing for the Tigers by the time he's late 22 early 23. Riley Green, because he was drafted out of high school, I would expect the same thing.
When you look at it, let's get a little into the draft. The second round pick, he's a Buckeye, and I'm such a Michigan slappy, as you very well know. I was a little disappointed, and I'll be honest. No, but it sounds like Dylan Dingler is definitely a guy that a catcher. What does this mean for Jake Rogers? Because you know how this game works. They draft a catcher. Everyone thinks Jake Rogers is the catcher of the future. So what are all the people saying to me? What happened to Jake Rogers? I mean, now,
Right.
Is he a bust? We should not look at it that way. Dingler was a player. We had Double D on last week, Dan Dickerson, who said, "Hey, if he's around in that second pick, don't sleep on this Ohio State catcher." So obviously, you can't have enough good quality players. Obviously, Dylan Dingler is one of those guys.
Well, nobody said that last year when they took Cooper Johnson, did they? For some reason. And Lance Parrish, I talked to Lance Parrish in Lakeland. He really likes Cooper Johnson. You need depth. This is the difference with an NBA or NFL draft. We are so programmed for NBA and NFL drafts, we lose sight of just how deep a baseball system must be. That you have to have at least a minimum of 2 catchers at every stop along the way. So if you're looking at 2 catchers at West Michigan, you're looking at 2 catchers in Lakeland, 2 catchers in Erie, 2 catchers in Toledo, at least 2 catchers in the Tigers. That tells you how deep your organization must be. So I don't think that's an issue at all. This guy's got a really good arm. He's a good backstop. He's a good athlete because he started playing center field in Columbus. And I think just as important as anything else, Art, he's a 2-time captain. That tells you something. You're a 2-time captain at Ohio State University. That means you're doing something right. You're leading men. That's really important.
It's good to see Lisa. She looks great.
Yeah, Lisa snuck in here. Yep, she looks really good. She's all fired up. She's pretty embarrassed right now. She can't believe it, but our calls are out. That's the way it's got to be.
Hey, it's live, right? What the hell? I mean, that's the way it goes. She looks beautiful funny. As always, though.
Thank you.
Dylan Dingler, obviously a preseason Big Ten Player of the Year, but in the third round, with the competitive balance pick.
Favorite pick. My favorite pick.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, because Daniel Cabrera was a guy that I think people thought was going to go higher. I mean, 62 is not bad, but someday you'll have to explain the competitive balance pick to me, whatever in the heck that actually means, and why the Tigers were like at 62, why they weren't right up there at 33 or something. But Daniel Cabrera practically falling into their lap. I mean, I was ecstatic. I mean, ecstatic.
Well, I'll tell you this: when they took Dylan Dingler 38th overall, I was actually borderline disappointed, because that's where I wanted Daniel Cabrera. And it just goes to show you how good of a gauge that Scott Pleiss and Al Avila had, and the temperature in the collective Major League Baseball room, that they feel like they could have gotten such a quality player with the competitive balance pick. I thought he was an end of the first round type of guy. I think he's a hell of a hitter, and I mean a hell of a hitter. They gave him number 8 for a reason there at LSU. It's a really important number. He's a captain. You're seeing that theme throughout the draft picks that this organization has made lately. How important character, leadership are, and then the on-base percentage. Look at how few times this guy strikes out. Look at the walk to strikeout ratio. Look at it for Torkelson. Look at it for Dingler in a full season. Look at it for Cabrera. It's really positive. The only guy who might swing and miss more than we would like right now, but you can almost understand it because he's a big, strong, power-hitting dude, and that is Gage Workman, the third baseman from Arizona State. But so I think they've drafted certain guys with certain characteristics. I mean, look at Spencer Torkelson just for a moment, Art. Everybody assumes power hitters have loopy swings and are dead pull hitters, right? That's not who he is. He's got a very flat swing. He's got a very direct swing. He can go the other way. This guy finds the gaps. But like I said, more importantly, he doesn't strike out. He doesn't swing and miss. He's not afraid. Scott Pleiss told us on a video conference after the draft how many times he and Alan Trammell, when they went and saw him, they saw him bat 4 times. each time he went either 3-1 or 3-2 in the count. In other words, he's not afraid to run that count deep, and then he hits a 3-2 slider over the right center field wall. You don't see that very often. And these guys all possess that type of innate skill to not panic when they're either behind in the count or when they go deep in the count. That's really important.
We already touched on Workman, third baseman, Spencer Torkelson's teammate at Arizona State. As you said, they really want him to be more of a contact hitter. If he can cut down on those strikeouts, he obviously could have a future in this organization as well.
Oh, without a doubt. He's a big, strong kid. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you look at his junior year and how good he was. He was, in 2020, he was off to a tough start. I think he was batting about 250 with only 3 bombs. Torkelson had 6, just to put it in perspective, after 17 games. But his junior year, he batted 330. He was going into this year's draft as a possible first-round pick. I mean, if you think about it, Art, they got 4 of their 6 picks. Torkelson, Cabrera, Dingler, and Workman. Those guys were all viewed as potential first or at least high second-round picks. I think it was Sports Illustrated, SI.com, wrote that the Tigers had 4 guys who were first-round picks. I mean, that they stole Workman. This is from people, MLB Pipeline, big-time grades, right? Baseball Prospect, big-time grades. Everybody feels like Detroit played the board exactly like they should have. I had a conversation with a buddy of mine the other day, and he said, I just would have liked to see the Tigers take a pitcher. And I said, okay, where did you want to see him take the pitcher? And they go, I don't know, maybe the 4th round. And I said, okay, who did you want? And they go, I don't know, we just wanted a pitcher. And I said, that's why they do what they do, and that's why you and I do what we do. They're not taking a position just for the sake of position. If you come at me and you say, I really wish they'd have taken Cole Wilcox, the big, strong right-handed pitcher out of Georgia, instead of Trey Cruz, I would say, okay, I get it. I understand that, because I thought that too. I think I went on social media. Is this where they go pitcher? Now, he has a bit of a problem with his control, and he might not be very signable. But the Padres rolled the dice at pick 80. If you would have chosen that and then come back with the high schooler, okay, I get it. But you got to have an idea. You got to understand what the philosophy is and where they're going with it. They didn't pick guys just for the sake of picking them, and they didn't pick based on need. They chose the best player they had on their board at the time. This is back-to-back solid drafts for the Tigers. And Casey Mize, of course, leading the one a couple of years ago. Hard to argue with that draft either. But, I mean, I think everybody in Detroit who's a baseball fan should be really fired up with what they got.
Well, I'm pretty fired up, too. Now, the thing that I don't understand is that Colt Keith was people were surprised. Biloxi High School, as you said, Gatorade Player of the Year in Mississippi, hit over 500, had 8 home runs his junior season. I know that he's slated maybe to go to Arizona State, but I don't understand how will the Tigers have enough money to slot it for him? Because he said, listen, I've got a number. If I don't reach that number, I'm going to Arizona State. I'm not quite sure. I've been so involved in hockey, as you know, Matt, for so many years. I understand how that all works. I'm kind of curious. What do you think the potential is of signing somebody like this, whom, in certain reports I've read, could be the steal of the draft?
Yeah, they don't draft him if they don't sign him. Okay, so you only have 5. Detroit had 6 picks. You only have 5 rounds, 6 picks. You're not going to quote unquote waste it, Art. You're not wasting it based if you're on a guy you cannot sign. It makes no sense. The kid also said, look, I've got a number a lot of teams called. They're not willing to go to that number. The Tigers are willing to get to that number. Thus, he's going to be signing with them. So I don't think there's any threat there. Arizona State, Tracy Smith is kind of bummed out. He was really proud that the Tigers drafted Torkelson and Workman, his 2 corner infielders. He's probably a little bit more bummed out that he gets one of his prize recruits coming in.
Hey, Matt, I wish we could talk longer, man. It's great seeing you. Lisa looked great. I'm glad your dog made an appearance. I mean, it was just a great time. Thank you very, very much, Matt. We'll talk to you very soon. Thank you.
All right, see you, buddy.
There you have it. That is a headliner with Matt Shepard, brought to you by Miller Lite, the original light beer with great taste and only 96 calories, available for delivery. Daniela, hey, the future looks bright for the Tigers. I'm pretty excited, especially after talking to Matt.